Today's class will require some props. In today's vlog, I want to talk to you a little bit about transportation in Chile. Transportation in Chile I've touched on just a little bit, but I want to tell you a little bit more, especially if you're going to come to Chile and travel around. When you come to Chile, there are a ton of options of how you might want to travel. One might be rent a car. Fairly inexpensive, especially if you have a few people. And you get to stop and take tons of pictures and things and go exactly where you want to and not worry about buses. If you want to go a little bit more economical, there are lots of other options as well. First of all, there are buses going almost anywhere in Chile. You can go from the north of Chile all the way down to the Patagonia part if you really wanted to. The other option, if you're in a small town, is this little guy right here. That's going to take you around the town and bring you somewhere for maybe 50 cents from one side of town to the other. You just have to look on the very front and see where it's going. For me every day, I take this little guy. It's called a micro, not a micro, a micro. And it takes you to different cities that are all around Chile. Micros really are the way to go if you are living in a little town and you need to get somewhere. It's really relaxing, especially if you're going and not at rush hour in the morning or at night. And it's a perfectly economic way to travel around Chile. Quick break from talking about the transportation in Chile. Let's go check out what's going on in school today. Always a fun day when you're with the kids. But now back to the story. So transportation is in different forms throughout all of Chile, but you can get around really easily with a bus. And buses are so nice because they're very, very cheap and you can travel overnight. You have to look for cama or semi-cama, which is gringo language for the bed or with kind of like a half bed in the bus. And you can actually sleep overnight if it says cama or semi-cama. And it works just great for going down south when it's maybe a 12-hour trip driving to the south. You can just go to sleep and you wake up and you're in a totally different part of Chile. It's perfect. But there's also, did you hear that? Whew, that was close. There's also airplanes, and you can travel easily with airplanes, and it's not very expensive. To go maybe 3 hours in an airplane is sometimes, if you find a good deal, around $60 US to go there and back. So if you look for deals, flying can be the way to go. That's our school bus. That's a lot of wood. There's big buses. And then there's these micro little buses. And then there's those buses right behind me in that direction. And those will take you anywhere in the city as well. But there's also small little cars that are right next to that bus there. And they're called colectivos. And they bring you around the city as well for really, really cheap, but there's only room for 4 other people. You see, there's tons of different ways to get around Chile. It's kind of nice because you don't always have to rent a car. You can just take a bus 8 hours south or 8 hours north, or go to another country around Chile just in a bus. It's kind of nice. When all else fails, there's always a taxi. So that taxi ride in our little town of Linares was only around $3, and you can go anywhere in the city for around $3. But if you are going in a bigger city like Santiago or Concepcion, those taxi fares are going to be a lot higher. In our town, we don't have anything called Uber, but in Santiago and other cities that are bigger, they do have Ubers. And I would highly recommend them or the taxis. Taxis here are very reliable, and I've heard of bad stories with them, but just be careful when you're traveling in any country, and you should be fine. Other forms of public transportation are, in the south there are a lot of ferries, because in order to get from one part of Chile to the other, you need to cross with a ferry. Cars, buses, they cannot cross. Other forms are trains. Trains are very similar here in Chile as they are in the United States, in that you can have a really cool seat and take an entire day and eat lunch and dinner on the train and arrive at your destination much later than if you were to take a bus. As far as prices go in traveling throughout Chile, I think it's more expensive here than any other place in South America, but it is still reasonable because it is public transportation. If you were to go from Santiago to Chiloé, which is about a maybe 12 or 14 hour trip in a bus, that is right around, and it depends on when you get the ticket, if it's a holiday or not. It's around $30 one way to get down there. Whereas if you find a cheap airplane flight, you could probably get down there for about $30 on an airplane too, if you find the right deals. The prices for everything really differs though. You could rent a car in the northern part of Chile for maybe $30 a day, but at peak times in Patagonia, it might cost around $60 a day. You really just have to look for the deals and be ready to drive in manual. All the cars here are manual. Not all, but most of the cars that you're going to rent or that people drive here are manual, so I hope that you know how to drive stick, because that's what it is. You see, public transportation is very, very, very important to life in, I think, all of South America, but especially in Chile. If they didn't have public transportation, a lot of people could not get to work, and a lot of people like me couldn't travel either. So if you're thinking about coming to Chile, make sure that you take a look at the public transportation. It's so easy to use, and it's way cheaper than renting a car. If possible, use that public transportation. It's there for you and the people who live here. How could I have forgotten about metros and city buses?